In the first 24 hours of a typical episode of Alone, each contestant must start a fire, build a shelter, and find water. This is what the experts call the science of survival. And if you're ever in a wilderness crisis, knowing this science could be the difference between life and death. Now let's get out here and learn some survival science. In this video, we'll cover the following 3 topics: finding clean water, building a simple shelter, and signaling for help. If you want to go deeper after this video, check out our free online course, The Science of Survival, where you can earn college credit. If you're new here, we are all about learning the science of everyday life. So subscribe for more awesome videos. Let's start with water. When you're outside your house, there are 2 main ways you can lose water. You lose a small amount of water constantly through normal bodily functions like sweating and breathing. We call this your basal metabolic rate. You also lose water whenever you sweat by doing things like walking around outside in the summer. Each time you do something that causes you to sweat, you have to replace the water you lost so that you don't become dehydrated. When your body doesn't have enough water, a lot of bad things happen. When you only have about 10% of your normal body water left, your brain starts to shrink, which can cause permanent damage. At 20%, your kidneys shut down, and at 40%, your heart stops beating. For this reason, getting water should be your #1 priority in any survival situation. So what does the science say about how to find water in the wilderness? First, look for flowing water. Water that moves, such as a stream or river, is usually cleaner than stagnant water, such as a lake or pond. That's because moving water is less likely to have high levels of decomposing organic matter, which can make it unsafe to drink. However, even flowing water can become contaminated after a heavy rain. When melting snow or ice makes its way into the water system, during these times, bacteria and other organic matter from the surrounding environment can end up in the water and make you sick if you drink it. If you're thirsty, then you probably don't have time to wait for the water to flow again. Fortunately, there's a really easy way to find out whether water is safe to drink without waiting for the heavy rains to stop. All you need to do is look for a spot where the water flows over rocks. Fast-flowing water over rocks is called whitewater. Whitewater is much cleaner than slow-moving water because rocks naturally filter out contaminants. This means that if you see whitewater, it's probably safe to drink. You might be thinking, great, but how do I actually collect the water once I find it? A common way to collect water in the wilderness is using a container such as a metal can or plastic bottle. But in order to ensure that your water is completely clean, you'll need to put a filter between your container and the water source. Fortunately, you don't need anything fancy to be able to do this. You can actually use a very simple material found just about anywhere to filter out contaminants in surface water. In a study published in 2019, researchers investigated how well people could purify water using materials they would likely have in their backpacks. Their results were pretty amazing. Using materials commonly found in backpacks, participants were able to reduce the number of bacteria in the water by 99.9%. Some surprising filters included bandanas, t-shirts, and even cigarette filters. Participants also reported that they would use materials like sticks, pine cones, and coffee grounds. While not as effective as the other materials, these methods may still be worth trying in a pinch. To build an effective filter, you'll need 2 things. First, wrap whatever material you choose in something that's tight enough to keep the contaminants out but loose enough to allow water to pass through. The second thing you'll need is something to collect the filtered water. If you don't have a container, you can use a leaf, bark, or any other natural material that holds water. Once you've gathered your supplies, submerge the filter in the water and squeeze to remove as much water as possible. Place your container on the ground several feet away from the water source and start squeezing. The water will flow from your filter into your container. If you're using a leaf or piece of bark, wring it out directly over your head to avoid contaminating the water source. Next, let's talk shelter. Our bodies gain heat in 2 main ways. We produce heat internally through our metabolism, and we absorb heat from the environment through our skin. The problem is that when the temperature drops, the amount of heat we absorb from the environment drops even faster. And when the heat we absorb is no longer enough to make up for the heat we lose through our metabolism, our body temperature begins to drop, leading to hypothermia. Fortunately, there are ways to prevent this. If you have access to trees, one of the best options for keeping warm is building a lean-to. Building a lean-to takes advantage of a natural phenomenon called radiative cooling. Radiative cooling happens when the temperature of an object is different from its surroundings. The warmer object radiates energy toward the colder surroundings until the 2 reach thermal equilibrium. If you have a warm object and a cold set of surroundings, then most of the energy will radiate from the object to the surroundings. In this scenario, the warm object will cool down quickly. However, if you have a cold object and warm surroundings, then most of the energy will radiate from the surroundings to the cold object. In this scenario, the cold object will warm up quickly. This is why a lean-to made of tree branches will keep you warm. During the day when the sun is shining, the branches absorb energy from the sun and then radiate that energy back toward you, warming you up. Similarly, during the night, the branches absorb energy from your body, slowing the rate at which you lose heat. To build a lean-to, you'll need long sturdy branches and a large tarp or a piece of bark. Start by finding 2 strong trees that are close together. Lean branches against the trees, starting at about waist height. Space the branches about 2 to 3 feet apart. Once you have the desired number of branches, lay your tarp or bark down against the branches. If you have extra material, fold it over the top of the branches to insulate them further. You're done. Now you have a nice warm place to take shelter. Finally, let's talk signaling. Signaling is important because it's how search and rescue teams know you need help. The key to being found is to signal as soon as possible. In fact, studies show that people who signal right away are found almost twice as fast as those who do UNT. There are 3 main ways to signal for help. The first is using visual signals, such as mirrors and flags. Visual signals work especially well in daytime and in clear weather. The second method is using auditory signals such as whistles and shouting. These work well if you're alone, but they don't work well if you're with other people because everyone will be making noise. The third method is using smoke. Smoke signals work well in almost any condition, but they require a lot of fuel to keep the smoke going. Of the 3 methods, smoke is the most likely to catch the attention of search and rescue crews. This is because it's the easiest to see from the air. In fact, smoke is so effective that it's often the only way survivors are found. Knowing this, you should always carry a fire starter in your backpack in case you need to start a signal fire. It's important to note that while these methods are useful, they aren't foolproof. In some cases, search and rescue crews may not see or hear your signals. Therefore, you should always bring a personal locator beacon. If you plan to venture far away from civilization, personal locator beacons, or PLBs, have a button that when pressed sends a signal to a satellite that relays your GPS coordinates to emergency services. PLBs are especially useful in remote areas where cell phone service is unavailable. They can also be used in conjunction with other signaling methods to increase your chances of being found. In short, if you're ever in a wilderness crisis, make sure to prioritize your water intake, build a warm shelter and signal for help. By understanding the science of survival, you can dramatically increase your chances of surviving a wilderness crisis. What survival tips would you share with others? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to go deeper, check out our free online course, The Science of Survival. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and click the card above for more videos about the science of survival.